Howdy Heroes Hearth, this is Kyle Fergusson with Bahamut, and we're talking Mei business. We're talking comps, we're talking power level. Where do we think she ends up? Bahamut, first impression.
She's really strong. Like, I think out the gate, she's got so much self-sustain based on the build, or she's got siege potential with the team. Her, specifically not the sieging one, but being able to disable towers by level 4, that's a wild concept to me.
So when you're saying power, you're talking about like self-regeneration tank power, not like overpowered because she has lane clear damage kind of thing. Or do you think the damage is good?
The damage, I'm 50-50 on. Because in any player's hands, it could be very strong or very weak. And I think she, damage-wise, is nice in the middle of the road when it comes to wave clear damage and all of that. But I think her own self-sustain, if you go trait build, is very strong, or just empowering a team to siege is just so strong. And I think she's going to be a critical tank for a lot of teams when she becomes live when she goes live on the servers.
So we're in agreement that like ETC, Johanna, kind of Garrosh, but Mei, all first pick tank of both. Yeah, right?
Oh, I think she's first pick, first ban material. Absolutely. Like, she's got engage, disengage. She's got a slow stun. She's got a slow. And if you go into it at level 10, you've got the avalanche as what I like to call the tank gust. This is basically Falstad's gust, but you can also make it, you can push them into a corner wall like a gust as well, and then capitalize on that. Or if, your team's getting dove on, you throw that backwards, everyone runs away.
You know what? That's a better sell. That's a better sell, because I've been going with Haymaker, but you're right, it hits multiple people, and the more people you hit, the more stun you get, and the more value you get out of it. Should we just jump there? Like, it's easy to think of this more in like a Medivh kind of way that, yes, Avalanche is cute, but Ice Wall will be where all the coordinated play ends up.
Oh, I 100% agree with you.
Okay.
Absolutely. Avalanche is going to be a fun tool to use here and there, and it might be specific for some compositions or maps or situations. But Ice Wall, that is going to be my go-to. When I was testing it out, I giggled at Avalanche, but I knew that I could set up kills, wins, and any sort of follow-up with Ice Wall.
Right, and that's where we get into some really interesting comps, but more on that in a minute. I am shocked that she gets a level 16 Murden talent at 7 with backup battery. And it has orbs to reduce the cooldown.
Yes. It's a 70-second cooldown. For every orb you get 10 seconds off of that. And on a rotation-heavy based map like Tomb of the Spider Queen, Infernal Shrines, she's going to benefit from that a ton. Even Brax's Holdout, where you do have the regeneration globe spawning points in the bottom and in the top lane, you're still able to get that cooldown reduction as well. And on the note of battery backup, as you're talking about, Crystallize. Crystallize reduces your trait by 15 seconds. So you have a 25-second Iron Skin, if you will, or Ice Block, as I like to call it, and you can regenerate 35% of your health from that baseline. Pair that into the level 7 battery backup, that's just wild. That you can go. I was testing it. You can go from about 800 health to about 4,000 health at level 20.
Interesting. Yeah. So you take both of those, and that sounds very, very Storm League, because self-regeneration on the tank. Plus, if you're engaging deep with icing, pop that while you're kind of engaging the backline. You have 50 spell armor for absorbing Li Ming orbs in Storm League. And then by the time it's over, maybe like cooling servos, and then you can icing out again if you end up doing the skate away. Nope, that's the physical talent. The cold front. You can't crystallize and cold front though.
I do like the cooling servos though, because that gives you that 200% ability cooldown. And it also gives you a passive slow on your auto attacks. Slowing by 20% for 1.5 seconds at level 13. That gives you more sustain chase. That offers things like Raynor or even Jaina to then get sustained damage, or even the burst that you need. Or even maybe Thrall can run in there and get a root and then just pop someone off as well. Like, I think cooling servos is such a strong talent as well. And I was saying this in my impression video, like, I think trait build is going to be very, very good for Storm League, but coordinated play might be a little bit different. I think coordinated play might go into more of the Snowblind build. That way you can siege and lock down towers.
I think you're right about the cooling servos, because giving that passive slow means that you can go trade at 1. Your range is 4.5. You're setting up kills. You have great engage and disengage. I think there's a nice counter pick in Malfurion in that way. It very much reminds me of like the Diablo don't come this way, Mei. This zone is off limits to you because you're not unstoppable during that slide.
But you can cancel it early. So if you do see something that's a little, sketchy as you slide in, you can double tap your E and stop that slide early. But also I like the factor that you can play that slide in as aggressive tool. You can slide past someone, bump them into your team, and I believe it has a slow on it as well.
Yeah, 80% slow, rapidly decaying, but still 80%. What I'm curious about is where she lands in the difficulty, because ETC has been easy for a really long time, and you look at the kit and you go, well, the amount of knowledge I need to execute this is not easy at all. What was Blizzard thinking? And now Mei is out and you're like, oh yeah, this is a really complicated ETC. Maybe they're right. How do you use icing easy? I mean, it's phase melt and the power slide, but the stun is something you'd have to combo into your Blizzard.
The one thing I was actually testing when I was in try mode, and when you mentioned Blizzard, I think a lot of it's going to be throwing your Blizzard first and then bumping people in with the icing. So that way you get a slow, you get a stun, I believe.
Yep, at the end of the
and
slow.
And then you can capitalize with a snow blind as well. So you could basically WEQ, and then people are still collapsing on top of this slowed, stunned, not moving person, as well as blinded person too. If you get that, if you lay in the snow blind.
But as we just mentioned, that's a combo with W and E, and while you can use snow blind to blind, as well as put the slow out early and maybe increase the chances they end up in the Blizzard, there is that huge hole there. And you're right about Slush Ball that disables structures for 3 seconds. Q's just sitting there. And like Johanna, if you're not using your blind to blind people, I think you end up on Slush Ball every game in that case. Why wouldn't you?
I agree. I absolutely agree. And I think that there's something to be said also about fresh powder at level 16 with that. That way you can initially throw things ahead and disable the structures. Maybe you have a Punisher coming down the lane. You want to disable the structure before it's even there, and then that way the Punisher jumps, and maybe you can then get your ice slide in and set up the rest of the team to then continue to dive underneath the tower because you've already locked it down initially. And if you are underneath the tower with our new patch when Mei comes out, only forts and keeps will aggro onto heroes and reduce armor. So if you want to dive under a tower, I think Mei disabling it and then sliding in is going to be such a strong duo.
Well, that's the crazy thing is it also turns off the previous aggro. So if it's mad at Mei for doing an isolation in range, she can freeze the building. It now loses its targeting when it comes back online and is targeting whatever else makes it mad in that range. So you can use it to get aggressive, be like, nope, I'm good. Please don't target me. And then re-aggressive during that. But if you do this like double stack 4 slush ball, 16 fresh powder, you can still do things like cooling servos and what have you and backup battery. What do you think of the big one at 20? Because I can't figure out what it's for. This is every 15 seconds. That slow line is bigger and deals more damage. And we could maybe like hit a building and a hero, but I don't really know why.
Maybe it's one of those things where you're up against a dive composition and you don't need the range from 16 whatsoever. You don't need fresh powder. You do need fresh powder because you want the additional charge. The range isn't what you really care for, but the big one, maybe you're in these situations where you're in a dive comp or you're against a dive composition. They keep diving onto you. So you can maybe even just alt Q this, dump it on yourself or maybe around you, and then you're blinding people, you're slowing them, and maybe the fight can turn around. That's the one way I was looking at this is just like, this has to be kind of like a shutdown talent rather than a tool to aggress even further. That's at least the way that I keep seeing this.
Yeah, it's a really weird 20 to talk about it as a total because you've got Cascade that's shooting out snow blinds. They're untalented, and they would hit the heroes that are going in the ball. So it's like a weird Valkyrie kind of thing, but it's not. I guess it's for the cooldown reduction in the end, the 25% or 25 seconds off. But you make a point. The untalented snowblind snowballs, like you're still going to slow and blind people with those. So that's true.
I do like that. Like, I like Cascade. I think Shatter's so strong though at level 20.
No, Shatter's just sitting there.
Expires, trapping enemy heroes take 210 damage, obviously scaling throughout the game, and they have their armor reduced by 25 for 5 seconds. 5 seconds in Heroes of the Storm is an eternity.
Yeah, and it's also your big combo ability of everyone get ready, let's drop some stuff on these guys as they pop out. I think Flash Freeze is sitting there as the Johanna Indestructible, like the, oh, you shouldn't, but you might in Storm League kind of thing. It will happen.
The way that I look at these two things, like Flash Freeze and Shatter, I think that's the same way that I look at Joanna's Radiating Faith and Indestructible at level 20. It's, do you want more setup for your team, or do you want your own self-sustain. And I think it's going to come down to what you just said. In Storm League, I think Flash Freeze will be a more popular pick for the personal self-sustain of a solo queue tank, whereas Shatter in a competitive setting is 100% the pick in my opinion, just because of how much follow-up you can have with that 25 armor reduction for 5 seconds.
90 seconds though, compared to what are we getting?
True.
40 seconds? 40 second Haymaker Gus business. It's but you're absolutely right. In coordinated play, Shatter's just sitting there, just looking about as darn as it can. If we turn our eyes to comps,
yes,
the first thing I think is executioners. There's a lot of slows, there's a lot of stuns, and Arthas doesn't bring home that bacon anymore in that department. Ever since Greymane made his big switcheroo into basically doing Cursed Bullet all the time, Arthas isn't the counter to catch a lot of heroes unless they're already immobile. Great for executioners, but now we have Mei bringing Executioner at 4.5 range, at much bigger range across all abilities than Arthas is in the first place.
And also, if you talent into it, a slow on just their auto attack.
Yeah.
For, what was it, 1.5 seconds, if I'm not mistaken? Yeah, 1.5 seconds, 20% slow. I 100% agree with you, because the first thing I looked through her entire kit when I was just reading the patch notes, and I go, Raynor ace in the hole. Like, this is going to be a best friend of Mei, I think, because she slows. Raynor loves sustained chase. That's a match made in heaven right there, in my opinion. You can still grab Jaina too if you really wanted to. You get just more slows, and I think her burst pairs well into this as well.
Yep, we got Raynor. That's interesting. We have a lot of different executioners, so
true.
Maybe we should think about where her power spike lies and where we would want that executioner to be active. Because Raynor's level 1, Greymane's is amazing, but it's at 16, if I'm correct. And that's a long road.
Zul has one correct, right? Isn't it? Is that at 16 as well, or was that removed ages ago?
He did.
I can't remember.
Yeah, that's removed now because it was up against his other, and we didn't really do it because of blue build. But he has his level 1 blue shield that when he auto attacks slowed targets, he gets his shield back sooner. So Zul kind of works into that neighborhood, and same with Phoenix. Like, we could do Salvo, which benefits from the slows that Mei might be putting out.
Oh my god, could you imagine Shatter, and then you throw a Blizzard? Do I have this right? I think I'm saying it wrong. No, you throw a Blizzard.
Yeah, no, it's named Blizzard. Yeah, it's
so I was like, wait a minute. So you have a Shatter. You throw out your Blizzard right after. So you get the Shatter value. Then you get your Blizzard slow stun. And then imagine a Salvo right after that from Phoenix.
Right.
That is a whole lot of damage. And if you're at level 20, you have 25 reduced armor as well if you go into that with Mei.
It's really easy to line up that Blizzard, Mei's Blizzard, on the ice walled targets as they pop out too. I mean, you got Orphea, who's a level 1 as well, next to Raynor, who's got that ancestral power business that allows her to deal more damage to slow targets. Other executioners are things like Hammer, or Lunara has one. But I think you're right in thinking, like, we probably need to have this executioner come online around 10, because Mei's survivability might go up, but it seems like that's kind of where her power spike is. I don't feel like her 16s are extremely rocking.
The only thing that I really like from the 16s personally is accumulation. Fresh powder is cool if you're going into that sieging build and you really want to go into that, but I like the additional charge is cool and all, but like accumulation is something that I keep finding myself going back to just because of you're gaining armor. Anytime a tank can gain armor, I'm like that. I'm kind of sold on that immediately.
That's fair. Yeah, we have our snow anomaly coming in too, so armor might be all the rage. And this is a % increase to her overall healing received, which works in her own % based healing that she's giving herself with both the cryo freeze and that backup battery. So you can increase all of that. I mean, it's a lot of power. You're getting, I mean, if you stack that with Polar Vortex, you can get it really fast too. I'm not sure if Polar Vortex is worth it, but it definitely gets you accumulated real fast. The next place my brain goes is, of course, the ice wall and what we would use to combo with the ice wall. And it is a straight line. Do you Hinterland blast this? Like, how cute do we get?
You could Hinterlands blast it. You already have Mei.
Shaped, yeah.
And then you could do Eternal Feast from Orphea, because they'll be buried alive.
And they'll be stunned because you lined up your Blizzard.
Exactly. And then the last thing is like, you could just, this is Jimmy and have a Hyperion on top of all of this as well. And he's just peppering him. Like, absolutely. I think like Hinterlands could be a viable pickup here.
I mean, we got things like Probius. Like there's so much setup time available that we can get a lot done. It is a stasis, so it would work with APOC, but that sort of divide happens because Mei's overall damage output just doesn't seem that amazing to maybe run a second tank on top of this.
Do you think she falls into a like semi-bruiser-ish role almost?
I think her lane clear is real bad. I think that you might be able to survive the lane, like, you know, just sit in it and make sure you don't die. That's absolutely a possibility. You do have a knockback to get people off points, and you could then freeze them off that point and complete the Dragonshire channel. I don't know. Seems like an uphill battle just because of the lane clear.
That is true. Her wave clear is not the quickest in the world, but I wonder if you end up just playing the lane super slow. You end up just playing, you know, in front of your gate, you're clearing here and there, and then maybe there's something highly mobile like a Maiev or a Genji on your team that can then execute someone who steps a little too far into your front gate and you play that slow. But her in the main tank role, I think would be great because she's got set up for a lot of teams. And let's say we're on this Braxis holdout. Like, let's just say we're split top lane, bottom lane. I think in a 4-stack, she does amazing in those situations.
I think she'd be really cool alongside Deckard for the long routes.
Oh.
And then you are unstoppable. You're not phased out, but underneath that shield, he could be throwing you a bunch of standstill, which is nice for Deckard. He's throwing you a bunch of potions there if you need them when you pop out.
Even Ana as well. She could throw a biotic grenade on you. And you could, if you went into crystallize at level. So crystallize isn't the big thing. It's just the cooldown reduction is the one thing that I like as well. And there's the mage armor, spell armor, but there's battery backup. So you'd have the 35% from your trait baseline, you'd get 20% from the battery backup, and then you get that amplified by Ana's biotic grenade. Could that work? Could you basically go from like 1 to back to full health?
Yeah, I don't see why not. No, that would happen. Huh, that's interesting. I do have one I'm most excited about with these straight lines is the Vala Rain of Vengeance.
Oh.
You get the wall out, everyone's in a nice pretty line, Vala vaults forward and just slams that thing down.
That's actually really cool. If you wanted to as well, you could then pull a Valkyrie afterwards. Just as people are trying to get away, as everyone's trying to scatter, you know, you stun them a bunch, you're bursting into them, and the ones that are just trying to get away, maybe there's a Li Ming who blinks away and doesn't get hit with the second Rain of Vengeance. Cassie just comes in with Valkyrie and pulls him back in.
I mean, the range on it is great. It's more about like what we can actually pull off with the rest of our team because it is radial.
That's fair.
Like the fact that it's radial and not dependent on our positioning, even when this character has the ability to reposition, is a really big deal.
I keep thinking of like how many different comps there are in Kyle. It's never ending. Like there's so many things you can pair into this just in straight line abilities. Even like a follow-up stay a while and listen to this, like with respect to your elders. So you'd have a blind and a silence too. I think Mei in a circling back to compositionally, I think Mei in a 4-stack works really, really well, even in a 3-stack. But when they get split by themselves, I 100% agree with you. I think you're then playing a very slow, safe solo lane that you're not going to win. You're just going to sustain it until you can get to the objective phase.
Now, it doesn't work on Unstoppable. At least the Snowball doesn't work on Unstoppable, but the Stasis does. So we could even stop Johanna's with the Ice Wall. But we haven't talked about the other feature of Ice Wall, which I know we're kind of like, it's Snowball, that's great. And now we're completely focused on Ice Wall. But it's terrain. It is a wall for someone like Ariel to maybe whip the tank into. You freeze the back line, Ariel whips the tank in there, and you get even more people in the juicy pile that's about to build.
That's actually a really good point. Like we were talking, you know, if there's a secondary tank, Diablo.
Yeah.
Overpower, shadow charge them right in, pop the apocalypse when everyone's kind of stacked up right there, just as it ends.
Just like the Void Prison, everything's all ready to go when they pop out. You can't cancel it early, so it's not as controllable, but I'm excited to have someone like Ariel back in the mix, and she's been gone for a while. With this amount of self-healing, with your ability to engage deep, I think Ariel absolutely could kind of be in that back line, not worrying about this tank, and then still deliver those whips as we advance in levels. So,
I 100% agree with you. Yeah. No, she's fallen off so hard all of a sudden. I thought with Tacitar's Force Wall being baseline, she'd be more prominent. Same thing with Diablo, but not the case. But I hope this will be a lot different. Even then, like, I was just thinking, you could Ice Wall, and then as people get out of the Ice Walls, they try and run away, you Force Wall on top of that.
you could do Imperious Q build on the people stuck in the wall. There's a lot of cuteness there, but I'm excited about Ariel. Before we end, let's flip the table. Counters, and I think you brought up Ana, and with this much self-healing in such a visual moment, that's looking pretty countery.
I was gonna say, do we see a rise in Emerald as well from Deckard Cain? Emerald and Biotic Grenade will be a very big way to shut down her self-healing. Because as we said, you can go at level 7, you can go battery backup and you can get some extra healing. But the big thing to note is that baseline, when she hits her trait, she's going to be unstoppable and restores up to 35% of their maximum health. So that's if you can mitigate some of that, that'd be huge, because you can then say, the fight that's about to turn, that's not turning anymore. You're now chasing still, and you're going to solidify that kill.
Now the unstoppable and the healing stops if the shield breaks. So Shattering Throw Varian could be an interesting, and I think Shattering Throw Varian is going to become a thing, because we're going to enter these snow flurries where a lot of people have shields.
That is true.
So we could break that down, ruin her healing that way. I mentioned Malfurion earlier, just to stop her from entering certain zones, because you're not unstoppable during that particular slide. But once she stops moving, you can still deny area with Blizzard, and you can go through people, so you don't have these counterplay problems like you have with Blaze. Health is huge, right around Uriel's level, so any sort of giant killer is going to be working pretty well. Is there anything else on the menu?
I think also shutting down her small amount of mobility is big. Like if you can stop her from getting a icing or that slide, maybe with a penetrating round from Raynor, maybe a knockback from ETC, I think that'll stop a lot of her hard engage, because that E is a very big part of her engage factor. She's going to slide into you. She's going to push people around. She's going to be trying to use the W. So I think counter displacement, if that makes any sense, face melt from ETC with the loudspeakers at level 4 will be a big tool. So that way, if you don't want to fight, let's say it's 15 to 16, you're about to hit that 16 talent tier. She wants to slide in and set stuff up for her team. You face melt that away and you disengage. So I think counter displacement, even Junkrat will be a big one. Concussion mines and steel traps will be a big factor to lock her down or even just get her away from the friendly team.
And if you spent your W before that trying to bot people into it, you just got yourself down 140 mana and 14 second cooldowns trying to pull off basically the power of one power slide. So we can basically use the same counters as Mal'Ganis. We got ETC, we got Lucio. You mentioned Junkrat, that's a great booper. Raynor to an extent, but I feel like they always miss their penetrating rounds.
Yeah. Oh, and it'll be fun to see what she does competitively as well as in Storm League. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Do you think she'll be a viable main tank? Do you think she'll be a bruiser? How will she work in the 4 stack? We'll see what happens as Mei releases soon in the Nexus.